Hey there and welcome. Today we're going to dive into an economic idea that honestly feels a little bit like magic. We're talking about how a single dollar of spending can ripple out and create way more value for the entire economy. So, let's see how it works.
So this is the big question, right? How on earth can $1 suddenly become $2 or even $3 worth of economic activity? It sounds kind of impossible, doesn't it? Well, stick with me, and I promise you'll see exactly how it's not only possible, but how it happens all the time.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this, we're going to start small. We're going to follow the journey of just one single dollar as it makes its way through a local economy. Let's paint a picture here. Imagine the government decides to invest in some local infrastructure, say a brand new bridge right in your town. That one decision, that one check written, that's the starting pistol for this entire economic race.
All right, now this is where things get really interesting. This is where the snowball starts to roll downhill. Because that initial spending on the bridge, it doesn't just stop there. Nope. It kicks off an incredible chain reaction.
So think it through. First, the government pays the construction company, right? The company then uses that money to pay its workers. Now, a worker takes their paycheck and buys groceries at a local store. Then, the grocery store owner uses that money to pay their suppliers. And on it goes. Do you see the pattern? That one initial dollar is being spent again and again and again, rippling out through the whole community.
And this ripple effect, this whole chain reaction, it isn't just some hypothetical example. It's actually a foundational concept in modern economics.
And here it is. It's called the multiplier effect. It's the idea that a change in government spending can have a surprisingly disproportionately large impact on a country's total economic output, what we call its GDP. To put it simply, one small action can create a much, much bigger reaction.
Now, this idea isn't new. It's actually a core principle of what's known as Keynesian economics, named after the super influential economist John Maynard Keynes. He was arguing way back in the 1930s that government spending was one of the most powerful tools available for managing a modern economy.
Now, for this whole thing to work, the math is pretty simple, but it is absolutely critical. The multiplier value has to be greater than 1. So if the multiplier is, say, 3, it means that for every single dollar the government spends, it actually generates $3 in new economic income. That's the goal. But okay, let's be real. This is not a magic wand, and the effect is definitely not guaranteed. So in our next section, let's take a look at how this perfect economic snowball can sometimes, well, just melt away. This right here is the big what if. The entire chain reaction we've been talking about hinges on one thing: people and businesses spending the money they receive. So, what happens when they just don't? Well, if people are worried about the future, maybe they're feeling insecure about their jobs during a tough economic time, they might choose to just save that extra cash. Or maybe they'll use it to pay down some debt. And when that happens, the chain reaction stops dead in its tracks. The multiplier effect just kind of fizzles out. And it gets even more complicated than that. The multiplier isn't just about positive growth. This entire process can be thrown into reverse. This is called the negative multiplier effect. It means a cut in government spending can actually shrink the economy by more than the amount of the cut. That same ripple effect we talked about just happens in reverse. Instead of creating income, it removes it from the system, and that can cause a really nasty downward spiral. So, given these risks, it's pretty clear that government spending isn't some kind of silver bullet. So what other tools do policymakers have in their toolkit to manage the economy?
There are really two main approaches. On one side, you have fiscal policy. That's what we've been discussing, the government using taxes and spending. On the other side, you've got monetary policy, which is controlled by a central bank, like the Fed here in the US. It uses different tools like changing interest rates to make it cheaper or more expensive for people and businesses to borrow money.
Okay, so we've covered the theory. We get how it's supposed to work, but how does this all play out in the real world, and why is it always such a hot topic of debate? Well, it's because not all spending is created equal. The big question for economists and politicians is always this: what kind of government spending gives you the biggest bang for your buck? Take a look at this data from Moody's Analytics. It shows the estimated multiplier for a few different types of government spending. Notice that increasing SNAP benefits, that's the program that helps low-income families buy food, has the highest multiplier. And the reason is, lower-income households are just much more likely to spend any extra dollar they get immediately, creating that powerful, fast-moving ripple effect. Let's just focus on that top number for a second, 1.61.
This estimate suggests that for every single dollar spent on increasing SNAP benefits, the economy grew by about $1.61. I mean, that is a powerful demonstration of the multiplier effect in action.
But, of course, the conversation doesn't end with the math. It never does. Choosing where to spend public money involves huge decisions about our values as a society, about politics, and about what kind of economy we ultimately want to build. And that really leaves us with this final question. We can calculate the numbers and we can debate the efficiency of different policies all day long. But the deeper question is a social one. When we choose to create this economic ripple, who are we trying to help the most? That's really something to think about.